Her son laughed when she said she was homeless. Better figure out couches, he smirked, coffee in hand, conscience gone. By fall, he was paying rent, the mother he dismissed. She didn't raise her voice, she purchased the deed. No warnings, no outbursts, just one signature at a time. And when the eviction came, it was signed by the woman he thought had nowhere left to go. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The coffee in Marla's cup had gone cold, but she held it anyway, both hands wrapped around it like it was still warming her. Across the kitchen table, Tyler scrolled through something on his phone, occasionally grunting, smiling at whatever the screen offered. She waited for a pause that never came. So she just said it. "I'm being evicted." His thumb paused mid-scroll. He looked up, blinked once, and then leaned back in his chair like she'd just told him a joke. "Well," he said with a snort, "better learn how couches work." His laugh wasn't cruel exactly, just lazy, as if empathy required more effort than he was willing to give. Brielle padded in barefoot from the hallway, a black yoga mat rolled under one arm. "What's funny?" Brielle gave a half shrug and pulled a bottle of green juice from the fridge. "You always bounce back. You'll figure it out." Marla didn't answer. Instead, she watched the two of them. Tyler in his old Bengals hoodie, Brielle in high-waisted leggings and a ponytail like she was always coming from or going to a workout. They stood comfortably in a space she realized she'd never been invited to until today. It smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and burnt toast. Not unpleasant, not welcoming either. She noticed something else then, the window behind Tyler. It overlooked the corner of Sycamore and Elmore, a corner she'd walked by hundreds of times when she worked as a school aide at Martin Elementary, back when the building across the street was a boarded-up shell with crumbling brick. This building had been new back then. She remembered the excitement when the city announced affordable units were going in. Now it looked tired. Paint peeling from the baseboards, a slow drip echoing from the kitchen faucet. But still standing, Tyler looked back down at his phone. "So what's the plan, Ma? You crashing with someone or doing the shelter thing?" "I haven't figured that out yet," Marla said evenly. She wouldn't give them the performance they seemed to be waiting for. Tears, panic, a plea for help. That part of her had been retired, same as her job. "Well, just don't show up here," Brielle added with a forced smile. "It's kinda tight as it is." Marla's lips curved, barely. "Wouldn't dream of it." She stood, smoothing the sleeves of her cardigan. She had come here to give them a chance. One last chance to show a sliver of the kindness she'd tucked into every school lunch, every early morning ride to baseball practice, every birthday card with money she didn't really have. And now she'd gotten her answer. "All right then," she said, grabbing her purse. "That's all I needed to say." Outside, the late October wind pressed against her coat, cold and familiar. A leaf scraped along the sidewalk like a whisper. The building across the street, Tyler's building, as she now realized, stood 4 stories tall with rusted fire escapes and crooked blinds in half the windows. Somewhere behind one of them, her son was pouring himself another cup of coffee, unbothered. She didn't cry, not even a lump in her throat. Instead, she looked up at the bricks, counted the windows, and felt something shift. Not sadness, not anger, just a click, like a puzzle piece falling into place. Mrs. Applegate answered her door with a tissue in hand and her glasses askew. The old woman's tiny living room smelled of menthol and old wood polish. "You all right, Marla?" Marla nodded once. They laughed. Of course they did. Mrs. Applegate sat beside her on the couch. People laugh when they're too hollow to hold pain. She squeezed Marla's hand. "You're not out. You're just on the edge of something." Marla sat there a moment longer, her eyes trailing the framed photos on the bookshelf. Weddings, birthdays, kids. Mrs. Applegate had stories tucked into every corner. And Marla had 30 days. Later that night, back in her own apartment with its empty walls and echoing quiet, she pulled out her flip phone. Its scratched screen lit up with an old list of saved contacts. Most names meant nothing now. Gone, moved, or forgotten. Except one. Linnea Tangor's call. Sant Thartrit for a long time, then pressed call. Next day, the key turned with a grinding cough, then silence. Dust rolled off the doorframe as Len pushed it open with his shoulder. "Smell that?" Marla stepped inside behind him. It hit her immediately. Mildew, paint thinner, something sharp underneath like rotting wood. She covered her nose with her sleeve. "That," Len said, "is the smell of opportunity, or liability. Depends on your angle." The building had 6 units, 3 on each side of a narrow, battered hallway that creaked like an old song with every step. Light filtered in through smudged glass panels above each door, catching on dust particles dancing in the stale air. A brown water stain shaped like Florida bled down one hallway corner. Marla didn't speak, but her fingers brushed the chipped banister as they ascended to the 2nd floor. He stopped outside Unit 2B. "This one's yours, on paper anyway." Familiar, Marla's eyes scanned the faded numbers on the door. 2B, the same number listed in the corner of Tyler's rent envelope. The one she'd glimpsed, clutched in his hand months ago. The one he left on the counter while bragging about staying in the city without paying midtown prices. Her jaw clenched, but she said nothing. Been on the market for 18 weeks, Len continued. Bank didn't want it on the books by winter. All cash, quick close. You sure about this? Marla reached into her purse and handed him the envelope. Inside, cashier's check, documents, a copy of her mother's tiny inheritance folded beside her school district retirement slip. She'd lived on peanut butter and pride for a year and a half to stretch what little she had. She was sure. I want it in a trust, she said. Not my name. Len gave a short nod, stepping over a warped floorboard. You get more protection that way. Tenants won't know who's pulling the strings. I don't want them to. He scratched his neck, then gestured for her to follow back down the stairs. Then you'll like Corey. The superintendent's office looked like it hadn't seen sunlight since the Clinton administration. A folding chair, a TV tray, tools lined up along the wall like silverware. Corey was already waiting, heavy set, grease under his nails, with eyes that didn't blink unless necessary. You're the one buying this wreck, he said, almost impressed. I am. Corey nodded. You fix the boiler before January, and you'll have tenants hugging you. Not him, though. He jerked a thumb upward. That guy complains if the sun rises too loud. Marla didn't have to ask who he meant. Tyler. I don't want hugs, she said. Just structure. Len raised an eyebrow, but Corey looked satisfied. After a brief walkthrough of the basement, moldy foundation, rats probably thinking about unionizing, they stepped outside into the crisp Cincinnati air. Cars passed lazily through the narrow street. A bus groaned at the corner stop. Somewhere nearby, someone was playing an old Motown record, loud enough for the bass to rattle a gutter. Marla didn't get in her car right away. She just stood at the curb, hands in her coat pockets, watching the front door across the street. She didn't need to say it out loud to know Len was already ahead of her. You sure you want to do it this way? He asked. You could just sell, walk away with your pride and a check. Marla's gaze didn't leave the doorway. Once it's mine, the leverage is quiet, she said. I want noise later, not now. Len gave a slow, approving chuckle. Then we're in business. They parted without ceremony. No handshake, no smile, just quiet understanding and paperwork signed under a cold Midwestern sky.
That night, parked across the street with her headlights off, Marla watched through her windshield as Tyler trudged up the sidewalk carrying a plastic grocery bag in each hand.
One broke slightly at the bottom. Something canned thudded onto the pavement. He cursed, picked it up, and kept going. She didn't wave, didn't even blink. She just watched as her tenant, her own son, walked into the building she now owned. The laughter came through the thin walls like the clang of cheap silverware, unapologetic, hollow, and sharp. She said she's between places, Tyler said, voice thick with beer and sarcasm, like a hobo on vacation. I'm just waiting for the Facebook post, My Truth. Please donate. The room erupted in snickers. A wine bottle uncorked with a soft pop. Someone muttered, damn, in that faux sympathetic tone people use when they want to seem human but stay entertained. Brielle set a tray of hummus and crackers down on the coffee table. That woman needs therapy or a tent, maybe both. The group laughed again, louder this time. Tyler raised his glass, to resilient moms and non-existent boundaries. Marla heard none of this. She was 2 floors down, walking slowly through the property with Corey under dim hall lighting that flickered like a bad conscience. You said you wanted the truth, Corey grunted, unlocking a utility closet. Here's the truth. Pipe behind Unit 1A still leaks when it rains hard. Old lady in 3B's got mice, real ones, not the ones she just imagines. And the buzzer system? Hell, you'll see. Marla didn't flinch at the list. She took notes in a small spiral-bound pad, her pen moving without pause. The smell in the hallway shifted with each floor. Faint garlic on the first, cigarette smoke on the second, weed laced with peppermint on the third. I want to hear from them all, she said. Tenants. Corey raised an eyebrow but nodded. You're the boss. They knocked first on 1A. A woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a Steelers hoodie opened the door just wide enough to be polite. Water's been better lately, she said. But tell whoever's in 2B to stop yelling at the Amazon guys. Ain't their fault he can't answer a damn door. Marla made a note. Next was 3B, Mrs. Thorne. Her apartment smelled like rosewater and cats. Too many cats, but she smiled when she spoke. New landlord? She asked, adjusting a loose button on her blouse. About time. The last one couldn't find a fuse box if it hit him in the jaw. You any better? We're getting there, Marla said simply. Outside Tyler's unit 2B, Marla slowed. The hallway rug had a dark stain that hadn't quite faded. The door buzzer was cracked, its button half missing. She crouched, took a quick photo with her old prepaid phone, and stood silently as music thumped faintly inside. Leave that one be tonight, Corey said. They're throwing some kind of dinner thing. Bunch of folks, loud voices, lot of candles, no taste. I'm not here to knock, Marla said. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded scrap of paper. She walked to the back exit, where the paint peeled around the frame and a wind draft whistled through like it wanted to escape. She knelt, smoothed the paper, and taped it eye level beside the latch. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. Corey tilted his head, reading. That for anyone specific? It's for the building, Marla said. Reminders help. She stepped outside into the dark. The cold hit her lungs sharp and clean. Across the parking lot, an upstairs window glowed warm. Tyler's. Laughter spilled out faintly, distorted through the glass. She didn't stop to listen. She didn't need to. Upstairs, Brielle passed through the hallway with a wine glass in one hand and a half-empty vape in the other. She opened the back door to toss something into the alley, then paused. The paper caught her eye. She peeled it from the wall, squinted. "Seriously?" she muttered, laughing. "Is this like a riddle? A passive-aggressive Hallmark card?" She crumpled it in her fist and dropped it into the recycling bin, without another thought. The envelopes were crisp, cream-colored, and tucked beneath each tenant's door before sunrise, like polite warnings or the first flakes of a coming storm. Marla stood with Corey outside Unit 1A, watching as he slid the last one through. "You're sure about the amount?" he asked. $42 more, she said, per unit. Enough to matter, not enough to revolt. "Cold," Corey muttered, but his grin said otherwise. Marla handed him the updated ledger and turned without a word. The hallway light buzzed overhead, casting long shadows down the stained carpet as she disappeared down the stairs like a ghost no one expected to haunt them. By noon, the building hummed with quiet confusion. By 3, it wasn't so quiet. "What the hell is this?" Tyler's voice echoed down the hallway, sharp and echoing through open doors. He stood at the bulletin board where a duplicate of the rent notice had been posted. His letter, crumpled in one hand, flapped as he gestured wildly. "Rent hike? With 0 notice? Who runs this circus?" Mrs. Thorne poked her head out from 3B, cat hair clinging to her shoulders. "It says effective next month." "That's notice, honey." Tyler turned, incredulous. "You're okay with this?" She shrugged. $40 more? That's like one DoorDash order, maybe less if Brielle stops ordering vegan sushi. Down the hall, Brielle emerged with a towel wrapped around her damp hair. "What's going on?" "Rent's up," Tyler snapped. "For no reason, and nobody even signs the damn letter." Corey appeared at the stairwell like he'd been summoned. He carried a wrench in one hand and a thermos in the other, calm as weathered stone. "You got a problem, take it to management," he said. Tyler scoffed. "Yeah? Who's that exactly? This mystery landlord hiding behind office mailboxes?" "Whoever it is," Corey replied, unscrewing the cap on his thermos. "They signed my checks. That's all I need to know." Brielle narrowed her eyes at the notice still pinned to the board. "Wait." Her voice slowed like she was working out a jigsaw puzzle in her head. "Didn't your mom used to talk about real estate stuff? That community program, what was it called? Senior something?" Tyler rolled his eyes so hard his neck moved. "Yeah, she volunteered. Like folding newsletters or licking envelopes. She couldn't manage a sandwich, let alone a building." Corey chuckled under his breath and took a long sip of whatever was in his thermos. "Could have fooled me," he said, mostly to himself. Tyler turned to him. "So you don't know who this person is either?" Corey gave a slow shrug, the kind that answered nothing while suggesting everything. "Inside her unit on the first floor. The one the tenants still thought was occupied by that sweet lady who used to live here." Marla sat in silence. Her blinds were drawn. Her shoes were off. She listened to the building, the way it shifted and reacted like a stirred beehive. On the table in front of her, 3 more envelopes sat ready, each marked for review. Lease amendments, policy addendums, nothing illegal, nothing loud, just pressure. Her phone buzzed beside her. "Corey, they're rattling. Want to tighten?" Marla's thumb hovered above the keyboard. Her smile was slow and small, barely there. Tyler hadn't touched the envelope for 2 full days. It sat on the kitchen counter between a half-used candle and an unopened box of oat milk, quietly radiating authority like it didn't care whether he liked it or not. On the 3rd morning, he ripped it open with his thumb and read the first line aloud. "Lease amendment packet," he muttered. "Effective immediately pending signature." What the? Across the kitchen, Brielle was blending kale into a protein smoothie. She didn't look up. "Is that about the rent again?" "No," he said, squinting. "It's about noise violations, guest policies, employment records." That got her attention. She turned the blender off mid-cycle. "Employment records? That's not legal." He flipped the page. "It says it's a voluntary update, but then it says they may factor it into lease compliance and renewal. That sounds like extortion." "You should talk to someone," she said. "Who?" Tyler snapped. "We don't even know who runs this place. It's like a damn shell company." In a beige-walled office 20 blocks away, Marla sat across from Len, the documents neatly stacked between them. The smell of stale coffee lingered from a pot that had been emptied hours ago. The walls buzzed faintly from the ancient fluorescent lights overhead. "I tightened the guest rules to no more than 3 overnight stays per week, unless cleared in advance," Len said, adjusting his glasses. "Noise restrictions after 10. Pet policy is explicit. Employment update form is optional, but encouraged." She looked at him flatly. "That's the point." Back at the building, a new notice had appeared in the mail slots that same afternoon. Building-wide maintenance inspection scheduled, Tuesday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It was printed in bold, laminated, and worded just vaguely enough to stir unease. Tyler threw the notice onto the kitchen table and began pacing. "What is this, the FBI now?" he muttered. "They're casing the place." Brielle raised an eyebrow. "Then maybe clean out the guest room." He stopped. "It's not a guest room, it's my office." "It has a dresser, Tyler, with clothes in it, that our friend Shannon left here 2 months ago when she crashed and never really left." He hesitated. "That's not a sublet." You're charging her $400 a month to cover utilities. That's different. No, it's not. Tuesday arrived gray and drizzling. Marla stayed out of sight, tucked away at a diner across from the building, sipping lukewarm tea and reading through maintenance logs. Corey handled the walkthrough, clipboard in hand, face impassive. In Unit 2B, the guest room had fresh linens, shoes lined up neatly in the closet, and a Yorkshire Terrier snoring softly under the bed. Corey didn't react. He just took a photo. By the end of the day, a violation notice was slid under Tyler's door, formally citing the unapproved pet and an unauthorized occupant. 10 days to remedy or face further action. Tyler crumpled the paper in one hand and slammed it against the wall. This is targeted, he said. This isn't about rules. Someone is coming for us. Brielle sat on the edge of the couch, unread lease forms scattered around her feet. Her voice was quiet. Someone's out to get us. He looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't laugh. The knock wasn't loud, but it carried authority, the kind that made walls feel thinner and ceilings lower. Tyler opened the door to a man in a navy windbreaker, clipboard in hand, city badge clipped to his belt. Building inspection, the man said flatly. Scheduled today. You got a minute? Tyler forced a smile and stepped aside, brushing crumbs from the counter like he'd been expecting royalty, not regulation. Sure, come on in. Always good to know things are up to code, right? He said, chuckling like this was a formality, a nuisance dressed in khakis. The inspector gave no sign of amusement. His gaze swept the room like a scanner, over the exposed wiring above the kitchen sink, the chipped paint along the baseboards, the slight sag in the ceiling by the hallway. Bathroom? He asked. Down the hall, Tyler replied, trailing behind him. You know, the building's old. Character, right? The inspector didn't answer. He turned the faucet on, then off. This dripping been reported? Tyler shifted. Not officially. Still dripping. In the stairwell, Corey followed silently behind the inspector, notepad in one hand, small flashlight in the other. He moved methodically, speaking only when asked, his expression unreadable. Every time the inspector made a mark on his sheet, Corey was watching, recording what would need to be handled, and what would be strategically left alone. Under Marla's direction, of course. Meanwhile, outside, the air was cold enough to sting, the wind carrying that sharp Cincinnati bite of river damp and car exhaust. Marla walked slowly past the building's front steps, her coat collar turned up, knit hat pulled low. She looked like anyone, an old woman with errands, invisible. Inside 2B, the inspector moved to the back window. The latch was broken. Tyler had jammed it shut with a paint stir stick. The inspector tested it, then wrote something down. Brielle appeared from the bedroom, wearing a hoodie and leggings, her face pinched with irritation. What is this exactly? You just barge in with a checklist and act like we're criminals? The inspector didn't even look at her. Standard city inspection, requested by owner. Whoever that is, Tyler snapped. Doesn't matter, the inspector replied, turning. You live here, you meet code. Brielle folded her arms. Feels like harassment. The man paused at the door, tapping the edge of his clipboard. This is housing code, not harassment. If you want harassment, I can flag the water heater too. They said nothing. As the inspector left, Corey lingered a moment longer. He looked around slowly, like he could still see where every shortcut had been taken. Then he nodded once. I'll be in touch. The door shut behind him, and silence flooded the room. Later that night, the hallway was dim again, just a single bulb casting a cone of weak yellow light near the stairwell. Brielle stood in the kitchen, rinsing out a glass, when she heard something. Paper, maybe, being slid across the floor just outside. She opened the door. A new envelope. No name, no stamp. Inside, a printed notice. Violation warning. Conditions required to cure lease breach. It was official, formatted, and very specific. Unapproved tenant. Unreported animal. Unsafe fixture in common space. 10 days. Tyler read it 3 times. No way this is just some new landlord, he muttered. This is personal. Brielle leaned against the counter. Her face had gone pale. She knows us, she said quietly. Tyler looked up. Who? But Brielle already knew, when the hallway lights had dimmed, and the city's breath settled into the kind of quiet that made even sirens sound respectful. Marla was brushing crumbs off her quilt when her flip phone lit up. The name on the screen stopped her hand mid-motion. Tyler. She let it ring twice, long enough to question his motive, not long enough to give him power. Then she flipped it open. Mom? His voice was unnaturally casual, syrupy in a way he reserved for waiters and realtors. She didn't reply right away. I was just thinking, he continued. We haven't talked in a bit. I know you were looking for a place. You land anywhere? Her eyes narrowed. No apology, no questions, just the performative concern of someone who'd been pushed into a corner and now wanted to decorate the walls. I did, she said. Oh, good, that's great. Hope it's not too far from the neighborhood? It's not. A pause crackled on the line like someone adjusting their mask. Well, if you ever need anything like help moving or I already moved. Another pause. I found a place, she said slowly. Nice little corner unit, good bones, decent tenants. One in particular needs work, but that's temporary. His voice lost its cushion. Wait, are you where? I'm your landlord, Tyler. Her words came like a sealed envelope sliding across a desk. You laughed when I said I was homeless. Now I own your walls. Dead silence. Even through the phone, she could hear his brain trying to process the sentence, trying to laugh it off. But something in her tone had settled that option. It was a full beat before he finally spoke. You're joking. No, she said plainly. Not this time. Click. She stared at the phone for a moment longer before closing it gently. No smile, no rush of victory, just the quiet finality of a lock turning. Upstairs, Tyler paced with the phone still in his hand, the call history screen mocking him in faint blue light. She's lying, he muttered. There's no way. Brielle sat frozen on the couch. She knew everything. The pet, the rent, the guest room. That wasn't a coincidence. He turned, eyes wild. It's a bluff. She's trying to scare us, like some power play. She doesn't have the money. She couldn't even afford her last place. You haven't talked to her in months, Brielle snapped. You don't know what she's capable of anymore. He stormed out into the hallway, hair uncombed, slippers smacking the floor. He found Corey at the end of the corridor, adjusting the wiring panel near the stairwell. You knew, Tyler barked. Corey didn't even flinch. He twisted one last wire into place and looked up slowly. She signs my checks, he said. The freezer coughed again. A low, sputtering click followed by silence, and then a dull, mechanical groan. Tyler, Brielle called from the kitchen, crouched in front of the fridge, her hand buried in a half-defrosted bag of frozen blueberries. The freezer's dead. Again. He didn't respond right away. He was hunched on the couch, scrolling through Reddit threads titled things like "Tenant writes when landlord is a sociopath." Did you try resetting the breaker? He mumbled. It's not the breaker, she snapped. It's the same thing that happened last week. Ice cream soup again, chicken's leaking. I'm done. She slammed the freezer door. She's doing this. Tyler stood. She can't control the damn freezer. No, but she controls the building, and you said it yourself, she wants us out. Upstairs, the other tenants weren't having problems. In fact, Corey had just finished installing a new carbon monoxide detector in 3B and quietly replaced the light fixture in the second-floor stairwell. Every fix had been directed from a short list in Marla's handwriting, concise, prioritized, actionable. But nowhere on the list was Unit 2B's shared power connection, which had long been on the defer until necessary category, until now. That afternoon, Corey climbed down into the basement and disconnected the shared line for 2B's freezer circuit. Technically, it was part of a planned upgrade, one that Marla had pulled forward on the schedule by 2 months. The work was entirely legal, documented, and logged in a time-stamped maintenance file. By 5 p.m., a delivery van pulled up and dropped off a small, humming black mini-fridge at Tyler and Brielle's door. Corey knocked once, stood back. Tyler opened the door. What the hell is that? Temporary solution, Corey said calmly. Your freezer line's down for maintenance, part of the building overhaul. This'll keep your perishables cold in the meantime. Brielle stepped up beside Tyler. This is retaliation. Corey blinked. This is electrical work. Tyler grabbed the dolly handle and dragged the fridge inside like it was a coffin. When the door shut, he spun around and punched the wall. Not hard enough to break it, but enough to feel it. This is war, he said. Brielle folded her arms tight against her chest. You already lost the first battle. He looked at her like she'd slapped him, then looked away just as fast. Downstairs, Marla stood by the window, sipping instant coffee from a chipped mug. Her unit was quiet. No TV, no music, just the occasional creak of the pipes and the rustle of wind against the glass. The folder on her table was open to a page marked Lease Clauses, Enforcement Actions. One line was underlined in red. Shared utility systems may be temporarily suspended for maintenance, provided alternative solutions are supplied. She tapped it once with her finger and smiled faintly. Across the hall, Corey dropped a folded paper into the outgoing mail bin. Notices for each tenant. All routine, all legal, except for one small detail. The newest notice for 2B didn't reference noise or rent. It simply read, Mandatory tenant interview, 30 days notice, participation required for lease continuation review. No explanation, no other unit received it. That night, Tyler opened the envelope while still clutching a melting popsicle. He read it once. What the hell is a tenant interview? Brielle leaned against the wall, rubbing her temple. I think, she whispered, she's just getting started. Next day, Marla didn't bring a clipboard. That would have made it look like an interrogation. Instead, she carried a notepad small enough to fold in her coat pocket and a Ziploc bag filled with mints. She knocked softly on each door, smiling like a neighbor stopping by with gossip, not authority. Thorne from 3B was the first to answer, her tabby cat curled around her ankles like a question mark. Oh, sweetie, come in, don't mind the clutter, she said, pushing aside a basket of unfolded towels. Marla took the edge of the couch. Just checking in with tenants, making sure everyone's feeling settled, she said, offering a mint. Anything on your mind? Well, Mrs. Thorne exhaled. Since you ask, yes. The boy in 2B, he's a handful. Always slamming doors, yelling out the window at delivery men like they're his exes. And the trash, leaves his takeout boxes in the wrong bin every time. Marla nodded gently. I'll note it, thank you. One floor down, the young couple in 1A, Nico and Jade, greeted her with cautious smiles. Their place smelled like instant noodles and lavender oil. "He parks in the loading zone," Jade said, fidgeting with her sleeve. "Every time, like the rules don't apply to him. He also let his dog off leash in the hallway," Nico added. "We've got a kid, and that thing jumped on her last week. No bark, but still, it's a dog, in a no-pet building." Marla wrote slowly, nodding as she wrote. Her hands didn't shake. She felt colder, steadier, with every door. By noon, she'd spoken to everyone but one. Corey watched her from the stairwell, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug. "You gonna knock?" Marla looked up toward 2B. The hallway above her echoed faintly with the dull rhythm of a gaming controller being slammed against a table. "I already did," she said. Later that afternoon, Tyler found the interview notice taped to the door again. This time it had a red final request stamp on it. The ink bled slightly through the page. "I'm not doing it," he said, tossing the paper into the trash. "She wants me to sit there while she takes notes like I'm in a principal's office." "No way." Brielle was folding laundry in the living room, her face tight with exhaustion. "She's gonna keep pushing, maybe we should just move." Tyler turned, jaw tight, and let her win. Brielle stared down at a crumpled sweatshirt. "She already is." In her unit, Marla sat at her kitchen table, steam rising from a fresh mug of chamomile tea. The notepad was open, a neat column of dates and quotes under each tenant's name. One page had only a single line beneath it, 2B, declined interview. She sipped her tea, the warmth soft against her lips, and smiled, quiet and certain. "He's already lost," she said. That evening, the mail arrived late. The building buzzed with the familiar shuffle of slippers down hallways, the occasional slam of a mailbox, junk flyers being torn in half and dumped directly into the recycling. Tyler opened his slot. There, in a plain white envelope, was a notice with a gold corner tab. "Rental adjustment notification, Unit 2B only." He read it once. His rent was going up. Significantly. No other unit, just his. Inside, Brielle read it over his shoulder. "She can't do this." He didn't speak. Because deep down, he knew. Yes, she could. Brielle didn't yell. That's what made it worse. She stood by the window in silence, jacket half-zipped, her hand on the keys like they were the last rope keeping her tethered. "I've packed a bag," she said quietly. "If this doesn't change, if you don't change, I'm gone." Tyler rubbed the back of his neck, pacing between the couch and the kitchen like motion might summon answers. The apartment smelled like old takeout and stress. The freezer hummed its stubborn little hum in the corner, still clinging to life on the borrowed mini-circuit. "This isn't me," he said finally. "It's her. You know that, right? This is all some revenge tour she's on." Brielle turned slowly. "She owns the building. You mocked her eviction, and she bought your roof. It's not a tour. It's precision." "She's my mother." "No," Brielle said, stepping closer. "She was your mother. You burned that bridge with a smirk and a couch joke." She grabbed her overnight bag from the floor and slung it over her shoulder. "If you want to fix this, stop pretending it's happening to you. Call her, ask to talk." The door didn't slam. It clicked shut like a final breath. Tyler stared at his phone for 20 minutes before typing the message. "Can we talk? Just us, please." The response came 90 minutes later. Not from Marla, from Len. "She'll meet you alone tomorrow, 2 p.m., Elsinore Diner." The Elsinore had cracked vinyl booths, a jukebox that hadn't worked since 2003, and the faint smell of burnt bacon and dish soap clinging to the walls. A waitress with frizzy hair poured coffee without asking. Tyler sat in the corner booth, bouncing one leg under the table. At exactly 2:02, Len slid into the seat across from him, calm, neutral, a man used to signing unpleasant things. Tyler blinked. "Where's my mom?" Len set a leather folder on the table and opened it. "She's not here. She's given me full authority to speak on her behalf." Tyler leaned back. "Of course she did." Len pushed a crisp document across the table. "Buyout offer. 30-day lease termination with moving costs covered. No penalties. And one-time forgiveness of the last rent increase. No eviction on your record." Tyler looked down at the numbers, then back up. "She wants me gone that badly?" "She's giving you the clean version. She's punishing me." Len folded his hands. "You laughed when she said she was homeless. You told people she was living in shelters. And now you're shocked she chose power over apology." Tyler's jaw tensed. "She's being petty. She's being strategic." Len said, eyes steady. "You said you were too grown to live with her. She made sure you couldn't." Tyler didn't touch the paper, didn't blink. "I'm not signing this." "No problem," Len said. "We file tomorrow." That night, Marla sat in her apartment at the kitchen table, light from the single overhead bulb pooling on the formica surface. In front of her, the city's tenant filing portal glowed softly. She adjusted her reading glasses, clicked initiate filing, and began typing. Unit 2B, formal notice of intent to pursue eviction. Violations, refusal to cure, non-compliance, obstruction of management efforts. In the section for optional remarks, she typed one sentence. "He made his choice. I'm making mine." She hovered for only a second, then clicked submit. A soft confirmation ding echoed in the room, unnoticed by anyone but her. She folded her hands and waited. The Bluetooth speaker Tyler used for side gigs at the brewery was gone. So was the laptop he rented out for graphic design freelance work. His Cash App balance read 9MD37, and the overdraft notice on his checking account had its own little red exclamation point blinking like a warning light on the dashboard of his life. And still, the rent notice hung on the fridge like a dare. "You said you'd cover this month," Brielle said. Her tone was cold, clinical. She wasn't asking anymore. Tyler looked up from the couch, face pale, eyes rimmed red. "I said I'd try. Then the DJ slot at Brick House got cut. They went with a guy who charges less and comes with lighting." Brielle didn't sigh. She just walked into the bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it. For hours, Tyler sat in silence, staring at a bottle of cheap whiskey on the kitchen counter. The old freezer let out a low, sick-sounding whir. Outside, someone in the building slammed a door, and it echoed in his skull like thunder. He was unraveling, and the worst part wasn't that he knew, it was that no one else seemed surprised. Across town, Marla sat in the third row of a small conference room at the community center, a name tag on her sweater and a cup of weak coffee in her hand. The fluorescent lights flickered like nervous eyelids overhead. On the podium, a woman in her 70s recounted being pushed out of her apartment after her landlord tripled her rent and changed the locks while she was at the grocery store. Marla didn't speak. She didn't need to. Len had submitted her story anonymously, just a paragraph. A retired school aide was evicted from her longtime rental by her son's landlord. She quietly acquired a new building where her son happened to live. She chose structure over vengeance. The moderator read it aloud, and murmurs filled the room. Respect, shock, admiration. Afterward, 2 local reporters approached Len, who stood off to the side, sipping hot water with lemon. One asked if the story was real. The other asked if the woman would be willing to talk on record. Len smiled like a man holding an ace behind his back. "She's not looking for press," he said. "She's looking for peace." In the maintenance room, Corey wiped grease from his hands and leaned against a supply cabinet while Marla reviewed the latest utility report. "You didn't just hold the door," Corey said, watching her over the rim of his coffee mug. "You flipped the building." Marla raised one eyebrow. Not bad for someone who was told to go figure out how couches work. Corey grinned. "They still think you're the sweet old lady in 1C. No clue you're writing their rules." She closed the folder. "That's how I like it." Then she stood, slow but steady, and gave him a look that held both satisfaction and restraint. "I didn't raise a king, Corey," she said softly. "I raised a mirror. He just never looked in it." At 2B, the mailbox clicked open. Inside sat a new envelope, official, sealed with a red corner tab. Tyler slid it out with trembling fingers, his name printed in bold. Below that, 3 words, "Final notice enclosed." He tore it open right there in the lobby. Unit 2B, eviction date set. Vacate by November 30. It felt like a punch. Silent, internal, permanent. The kind that left no bruise but broke everything anyway. Upstairs, Brielle packed without a word. The sound of packing tape was louder than it should have been. Each pull, each rip from the dispenser echoed like a slap through the hollowing apartment. Tyler sat on the floor, surrounded by open boxes, knees bent, eyes unfocused. Across the room, Brielle zipped her duffel bag without hesitation. No final sweep, no sentimental glance, just movement. Cold, clean, efficient. "I booked a short term in Oakley," she said, not looking at him. "Month to month. I'm not waiting around for a sheriff to knock." Tyler didn't answer. He was folding a hoodie that still smelled faintly of her lavender detergent, slower than necessary. "You could have ended this months ago," she added, hoisting her bag over her shoulder. "All you had to do was be decent." He looked up then. His eyes were red but dry. "So you're just walking?" "I'm walking because you sat still too long." She left. No hug, no slam, just the soft click of the door closing on what they used to be. Marla stood in the hallway, unseen but very much present. Her coat hung open, arms folded loosely, as she watched movers carry boxes up the stairs. 2 men in blue t-shirts balancing bed parts and plastic bins. Corey stood beside the open unit on the 3rd floor, freshly painted, newly carpeted. The door hung wide, light pouring out like an invitation. Inside was the new tenant, a single mother Marla had met at the senior housing panel 3 weeks earlier. Denise, 33, works in dialysis, 2 kids, no nonsense. Marla remembered her story, a lease that disappeared the day her ex stopped paying, a couch slept on for 4 months, a tenacity that reminded Marla of herself. "You sure she's a good fit?" Corey asked under his breath, wiping his hands on his tool belt. Marla nodded. "She's overqualified." The youngest child, a boy of about 6, dragged a box labeled Toys Keep across the landing and looked up at her with cautious eyes. Marla smiled and knelt to grab the other side. "I've moved a box or 2, she said. The boy grinned and let her help. Inside the apartment, Denise turned from unpacking plates and froze. Her eyes met Marla's, surprised, grateful, and something else. "You didn't have to help," she said softly. "I wanted to," Marla replied. "You've earned stillness." She helped set the box down near a window and stepped back without fanfare, letting the mother reclaim her space. Downstairs, Tyler was taping up a box marked "My Sick." The marker smudged. The box was half empty. The silence around him felt like a verdict. Outside, the sun was already sinking behind the building, casting long, sharp shadows over the sidewalk. He stepped out with 2 boxes in his arms. His breath fogged lightly in the crisp November air. The cold bit his fingers through the tape seams. Marla was coming back from the dumpster, sleeves rolled up, a pair of gardening gloves in her back pocket. Her boots scuffed faintly against the concrete as she approached the building entrance. Tyler saw her. She saw him. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, enough to register recognition, maybe even regret, but nothing passed between them. No words. He shifted the boxes in his arms and walked right past her. She didn't stop him. She just stepped aside and held the door open. The door creaked when it opened, wide, slow, like the unit itself was exhaling. Marla stood in the threshold of what used to be Tyler's apartment, the overhead lights still buzzing, left on without apology. Dust floated in the beam like memory. The place was technically empty, but not clean. There was a difference. Corey stepped in behind her, clipboard in hand, boots scuffing the warped laminate floors. "Still smells like stale cologne and frozen pizza," he muttered. Marla didn't respond. She was staring at the floor, where a thin gray carpet square had been peeled back, revealing a darker rectangle beneath it, an outline of where something once sat for too long. The silence in the room was heavy, not peaceful. It hummed, like grief with its arms crossed. Tyler had left in a hurry. Cabinet doors ajar, a towel still hanging on the back of the bathroom door, damp at the corners. A spoon in the sink, as if he'd meant to come back after one last bite. The fridge was empty, the freezer dripping quietly onto the bottom shelf. One closet door hung crooked on its hinges, revealing a single bent wire hanger left behind like punctuation. "Check that, will you?" Marla said, nodding to the hallway closet. Corey moved to it, tugged it open with effort. "Just dust and resentment," he muttered, scribbling something on the clipboard. Marla walked slowly toward the window, her fingers brushing the sill. Chips in the paint, fingerprints on the glass. The hum of distant traffic outside. A bus groaned to a stop a block away. She turned, moving to the kitchen. It was only when she bent down to check beneath the fridge that she saw it. A photo. Torn, dirty, curled at the edges from years of neglect. It must have fallen, lodged behind the baseboard in dust. She picked it up carefully. It was her, and Tyler. He was 12, maybe 13. They were at Kings Island, matching sunburns on their cheeks. She was laughing. He was mid-eye roll, pretending not to smile. Her hand was on his shoulder. The rip ran right through her face. Marla held it for a long moment. The ache came not sharp, but slow, like arthritis of the soul. Then, wordlessly, she folded the photo once, then again, and placed it back where she found it. Some things didn't need preserving. Corey was leaning against the counter now. "You gonna rent it again?" Marla looked around the room. The echo of Tyler's voice still seemed to linger in the corners. Loud, dismissive, always one step removed from compassion. The kind of noise you didn't realize you were absorbing until it left, and peace had a chance to stretch its legs. "Not yet," she said. "Let it breathe." Corey nodded. "It's earned it." They stepped out together, Marla flicking the switch as she passed. The light died behind them with a soft click. She didn't look back. Later that week, Marla sat at her kitchen table with a bowl of soup cooling beside her. The radiator hissed softly. She was reviewing electric invoices when her phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. She answered with a quiet, "Hello?" A warm voice greeted her. A woman, mid-40s, full of energy and focus. "Mrs. Jensen? My name's Raquel. I run a nonprofit called Hearth and Harbor. We work with vulnerable seniors in transitional housing situations, and well, your name came up." Marla blinked. "My name? Yes, ma'am. We were told about a situation involving a building purchase, an informal tenant advocacy effort, and a pretty stunning show of grace under pressure." Marla chuckled softly. "I just cleaned up a mess. That's exactly the kind of person we want involved. We're seeking private partners for a pilot program, something small, local. We'd provide resources and tenant support. You'd provide what you've already proven you have, the will to make the hard things just." Marla leaned back in her chair, the soup untouched beside her. "I'm listening," she said. The paint on her walls dried slower than expected, but Marla didn't mind. She sat in her kitchen, windows cracked, letting the scent of fresh linen paint mix with the breeze coming in off the street. It smelled like something starting over. A potted ficus stood by the door now. Corey had hauled it up 3 flights for her. The rug in the entryway was new, plush beneath her bare feet. The dining table, once used more for sorting bills than sharing meals, was cleared and centered beneath the soft glow of a pendant light she picked out herself. She hadn't just taken back her space, she'd redefined it. Each morning, she walked the halls before the others were up, taking stock of silence, light, energy. The building had changed since she'd bought it. No longer something broken to be endured, but something living, responsive, whole. And so had she. Applegate came once a month now, always with a tin of lemon cookies and a story about her latest feud with the produce guy at Kroger. Looked me in the eye and told me cantaloupes were out of season. In July. Marla laughed, pouring 2 cups of weak tea as the radio played old jazz in the background. The apartment was warm, filled with signs of life and none of the sharp edges it once held. "You look lighter," Mrs. Applegate said one afternoon, eyeing the plants lining the windowsill, like someone who stopped carrying what wasn't hers. Marla just smiled. "I let the building do that for me." Upstairs, Denise had started leaving her resume drafts under Marla's door every Sunday evening. Single spacing, crooked margins, uncertain phrasing, but the ambition was in the ink. Marla edited each one in pencil, adding notes in the margins, crossing out objective, and replacing it with a purpose: to support my family while returning to the workforce with strength and adaptability. When Denise knocked one afternoon to thank her, Marla just waved it off. "It's your voice on that paper," she said. "I just turned the volume up." The will took her 2 days to finish. 2 long days of careful language and quiet intention. No heirs named. No grudges scrawled in legalese. Just one line that mattered. "Upon my death, the building located at 344 Elmore Avenue shall be transferred to Hearth and Harbor Community Housing Initiative in full, to be used for elder-friendly and transitional support housing." She signed it, not with sorrow, but with clarity. That Saturday, Corey showed up with a cordless drill, a level, and a small brass plaque wrapped in bubble wrap. "Where do you want it?" he asked. Marla ran her hand along the doorway, the frame freshly painted, the trim sanded smooth. "Here," she said, tapping the spot just to the right of her doorbell. Corey mounted it carefully, wiped away the dust with his sleeve, and stepped back so she could read it. "Owned, never owed." She stared at it for a long time, and then, without thinking, her eyes drifted down the hall toward Tyler's old door. It looked the same, closed, quiet, just wood now. No threat, no weight. She took one step toward it, then stopped. She didn't need to knock. That chapter had closed on its own. She turned back to her door and paused. From the unit above, laughter floated down. Children's voices, high and playful. A woman joining in, warm and unguarded. Music in the background, the faint thump of a bass line, and a second voice, another tenant joining the conversation through an open hallway. It wasn't the kind of laughter that tried to silence pain, it was the kind that followed healing. Marla smiled. Marla stepped out into the cold morning like she belonged to it. The air smelled like chimney smoke and rain-soaked concrete, the kind of late autumn blend only Cincinnati could make feel nostalgic. The sidewalk still glistened from a morning drizzle, leaves sticking to the soles of her boots with soft crunches as she walked her usual loop. Elmore to Sycamore, Sycamore to the corner where the bench curved beneath a red oak that never quite shed all its leaves. "Miss Jensen?" a voice called out from a stoop. She turned, squinting toward a boy with a drawstring backpack and one untied shoe. "Mrs. Hill's class?" she asked, smiling. He nodded, sheepish. "You helped me with reading, like, a while ago." Marla chuckled. "And now?" "Junior at Hughes. English is my best class." He shrugged. "You kinda made that happen." She gave him a thumbs up and kept walking. Not fast, not slow, just steady. She passed 2 more familiar faces, one of her old bus drivers from the school district, now running a pop-up lawn care business. Another, a woman who used to live down the block and still wore the same frizzy curls and smelled of strong floral lotion. All greeted her with the kind of warmth you can't fake. Quiet acknowledgement of someone who had never disappeared, only receded. When she rounded the corner back toward 344 Elmore, she stopped. The building looked taller now, stronger. The new exterior paint caught the afternoon light just right, a pale cream against charcoal trim that made the windows pop like eyes wide open. There was a freshly swept stoop, a coat rack just inside the lobby window, and off to the side, a small garden box Corey had built out of reclaimed wood. Marla sat on the bench just outside. No rush. The keys in her coat pocket were warm from her hand. Across the street, someone was playing an old Motown track from a cracked car speaker. "Ain't no mountain high enough." The bass thumped lazily. A toddler upstairs shrieked with laughter, followed by Denise's voice calming, then giggling with her son. Above her, a neighbor shouted something about missing garbage day, and footsteps echoed down the hallway stairs. It was all music to Marla. She reached into her coat, pulled out her notebook, just one small list of to-dos. Nothing urgent. A note about mulch for the garden box. A call to return to Raquel at Hearth and Harbor. A reminder to buy more tea. Her phone buzzed once in her pocket. No caller ID. She stared at it, didn't answer, didn't decline. She let it ring until it stopped, slipping the phone face down on the bench beside her. He never called before the eviction, never called after, and she never blocked him. Some silences don't need closing, they just need keeping. She stood, adjusted the collar of her coat, and stepped up to the building she owned, not just on paper, but in purpose. The small brass plaque beside the door caught the light. Owned, never owed. She placed her hand on the doorknob, then paused. From the second-floor window came a burst of laughter, pure, full-bodied, and real. A chorus of joy from the new tenants. Denise, her boys, the neighbor from 3A. Voices blending, energy reborn. No bitterness in it, no tension, just sound that belonged. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The hallway smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine sol. The light was soft, Someone had left a thank you note in the community tray by the mailboxes, handwritten. Before going upstairs, Marla looked back once through the glass panel in the door, not to check for anything, just to remember. She closed it behind her. Voiceover. He laughed when I said I was homeless. Final line, but I was just between acquisitions.